last year received a contribution from a woman. It was a dollar bill in a letter. She had a little note and said, I wish I could do more. You've helped me in the past. I wanted to give. And so every dollar matters.
Yeah. $848,000. That's how many San Diegans can't reliably put 3 meals on the table. 1 in 4 of us. A lot of people have a picture in their head of who those 848,000 people are. Someone's not working, someone who made bad choices, someone not in their neighborhood. I hear it all the time, and it's wrong. Today I'm sitting across from Casey Castillo. He runs the San Diego Food Bank. Before we started recording, he shared with me that this is teachers, nurses, military families, certainly children, seniors who worked their entire lives, parents juggling with 2 jobs who still can't cover the cost of groceries after paying for rent. I'm David Alvarez. This is Dreaming Big, Working Hard. Casey has been with the food bank since 2008. He led them through the Great Recession, through COVID, and through the 43-day government shutdown that just ended, the longest in American history. 400,000 San Diegans didn't know if they would have food. Today, we're going to talk about what hunger actually looks like in San Diego, not just making assumptions, what the reality is. We're going to talk about what happened during those 43 days, how the food bank responded, why the crisis didn't just end when the government reopened, and what it's going to take to make sure that families in this county can eat. If you believe that matters, subscribe to Dreaming Big, Working Hard. Let's get into it. Casey, thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor to have you. You are really doing big things in a moment when we need the food bank. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's an honor. Appreciate the invitation, Assemblymember, and thank you for your leadership. We've worked closely together for a number of years, and we appreciate all that you do.
It's really been a pleasure. You're such an easy organization to work with, and so that's why I wanted to make sure people knew more about what the food bank is doing and what the food bank has had to go through. This has been a really challenging year. It's a challenging time for a lot of people. We've heard the statistics on the 848,000. That is a lot of people that really depend and need on the work that the food bank does. But I want to start by hearing your story, if you don't mind sharing with us how you got to this work.
Yeah, so I love nonprofit work. I was fortunate that early on in my life, I kind of understood about myself that I'm a mission-driven person. Had my first opportunity in my early 20s to work for a nonprofit organization. And I really found I was able to combine some of the skills I had, the things I like to do, which were on the finance and accounting side, and then mix that with a mission-driven organization that I cared about. That first organization was a foster care agency, and we also had mental health, so counseling centers. And it's really where I kind of grew my love for the nonprofit world. And then ultimately that led me to the San Diego Food Bank.
Yeah. Nonprofit is a way to serve others, in my opinion. And I had my very first job was in the nonprofit sector, and I worked for several nonprofits, and I now work in the public sector, but it's about service to others. And that's what it sounds like you've been doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's certainly focused on serving. But I also will say that for us to be able to solve problems and for this to work well, it will mean public and private, nonprofit and public, nonprofit and government really working side by side. So you're still serving in your elected official role. And certainly it's something I appreciate that I get to do daily too.
Yeah. The more I talk to people in any line of work or any industry or what's happening really in our community, it always comes back to collaboration and working with others and finding ways to meet the needs that exist in our community, which are bigger than any one of us could really solve.
Yeah, there's some big problems here, but I agree with you. And I think San Diego is unique too. And you probably, since you travel around the state, and I'm sure around the country, for time and time again, and food banks do a nice job across the country of speaking with one another. I hear that San Diego is unique. And one of the unique things about San Diego that others from outside of San Diego say is that they see how well we collaborate within the county. I think that's true, but I think there needs to be more of that, especially with how big these problems are, whether it's food insecurity or housing. There's some big problems. I believe we can solve them, but to do that, we're going to need to collaborate, and I think form probably more coalitions as well.
Yeah, but absolutely, we all have a role to play. That's been a running theme with our podcast guests of like we each have a place in this world of what we can do, and what you do helps out so many people. This has been a challenging year for many reasons. We can talk about all those details, but the food bank serves, just as a basic statistic, 1 out of 4 San Diegans. That is a lot of people in San Diego, and they're not geographically located in one place of San Diego. They are throughout this county
Yeah.
that is very diverse. How do you feel about that responsibility that is on you to meet the needs of the people that need your help?
Well, it's a big responsibility, but we do not do it alone. I mean, I think that's the comforting part of this. As you point out, over 800,000 individuals in San Diego County are estimated to be facing food insecurity right now. We serve a little over 400,000 of them. So we still have some work to do. But this work is not, we don't do alone. There's so many amazing organizations out there that are right there alongside us in that work. In fact, the San Diego Food Bank partners with over 450 other nonprofits. We support them with food. They come to our facilities, they shop, and they get that food from us, food that's just right and needed for their neighbors. And they take that food back to those neighborhoods. And we're able to feed a lot of people that way. It's efficient. We love that model. Again, it's better to do this work together. And so again, we don't do it alone.
Yeah.
We certainly take our responsibility in the role that we play seriously, but we're comforted that we have so many other great organizations and then other stakeholders like you, elected officials, that are right there with us to help support that work.
And I definitely want to ask you about the specifics of those partnerships, but I've witnessed it now. This is the 3rd year that we partner on doing what's become a really just wonderful event. This year, over 650 families served, seniors and families, with a Thanksgiving meal, which is such an important time of the year for us to feel that normal, especially in times that sometimes don't feel so normal, to be able to have a normal Thanksgiving meal, which not everybody has access to. And so I've seen that partnership, whether it's with Parks and Rec in Chula Vista, with our seniors at the Senior Tower, or at the Sherman Heights Community Center, another nonprofit that you partner with, but you've got over 450. This time of the year must be really special for you. And it reminds you probably of why the work gets done, but also I think maybe feels really fulfilling because you see it more directly.
Absolutely. And we love those distributions that you just mentioned. Our turkey distributions are really important to us. And as you point out, it's because we want to make sure these amazing families have the type of Thanksgiving that they deserve. They can be around the table with their family members and have a warm, nice meal. And so we love the partnerships. I love that, when we were together just under 2 weeks ago, you thought 600 families, maybe we could do 1,000.
Yeah.
Let's do it, I think. One thing I'll point out is during this season, we distribute over 11,000 turkeys. And again, that was a real treat. And I love being at those distributions. I love being connected with our neighbors, and to see the gratitude that they have for the help that they're getting, but also just how special they are, and that these are real people. I mean, we talk about the 800,000 mind-blowing numbers and the over 400,000 people that we're serving, but these are seniors, right? These are grandmothers. These are children. These are military families. These are real folks, and we have an opportunity to help.
Yeah. And this has been a challenging year. Certainly cost of living continues to be a challenge. The cost of everything continues to be a challenge. Food insecurity has not gone away. It's a persistent challenge that I think we all have to acknowledge as a society, as members of the community, as leaders who have an opportunity to make decisions, and organizations like yours. Where are we from now? You're in your 17th year, I believe, of doing the work of the at the food bank. Where have we been, and where are we, and where are we sort of going in the future to address these needs?
Yeah, yeah. I've been with the food bank for a long time. It means I've seen just about everything: a recession, wildfires, floods, a pandemic, and now the longest shutdown in our country's history. I wish I were more optimistic about where we're going. At least optimistic about what our folks are going to be seeing. I'm optimistic about together. We can solve these big issues. But unfortunately, after the COVID rebound, because of all the things you mentioned earlier, inflation, namely food inflation for the people that we're serving, the high cost of housing, the utility bills, um, medical, and all of those things, they're trending. They continue to trend up, right? They're not changing for our families. And there's some other statistics I've heard recently, like there's some cities here in San Diego County that are up there with other cities in the country for being having the most credit card debt,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have some cities that have, again, countrywide, some of the most or the highest credit card debt. So that's alarming, and it means it's going to be very difficult for these families to recover. So we've seen numbers after the COVID rebound continue to climb because of those reasons, because of all those factors. And then you throw a shutdown in that we
Yeah.
recently went through. That's devastating.
Yeah, I want
Yeah.
to ask you about that because I think one of the most public items of the shutdown was the issue of people who had earned and desperately needed
Yeah.
the support to put food on their table. And from what I was reading, and certainly not an expert in the policy area of food, but there was a possibility for the government to actually continue to give those benefits to those people who had earned it through some mechanism, but they chose not to. So we went 43 days
Yeah.
of a shutdown, the longest in the history. And how many people were at risk in San Diego and did not actually receive their benefits when they needed them? And how did you step in to help meet that need?
Yeah. So it wasn't our first shutdown, but to your point, we saw things for the first time during this shutdown that we hadn't seen before. So let's start with federal workers. Over 50,000 federal workers in San Diego County. Military, active duty, over 100,000 active duty military. That's 150,000 people that starting October 1st were in jeopardy of not being paid, missing paychecks. And some of them, not all of them, missed checks, but some of them did. And so those are folks that had jobs, never needed to seek service from food banks or pantries, and found themselves in trouble. And it doesn't take very much, right? One missed check, maybe two, and families are in trouble. That's what the averages say. And so again, those are families not experienced in the food insecurity
Yeah.
world. And so those are big numbers. On November 1st, there were 400,000 SNAP recipients that had their benefits withheld,
Yeah.
that were receiving those benefits on a monthly basis. November 1st, they did not receive those funds. And I think what's scary about that, and often during the shutdown in interviews, folks would ask me about, how does this compare to the pandemic? How does this compare to COVID-19? And honestly, I thought it had the possibility of being scarier because the numbers were bigger. Again, 400,000 SNAP recipients not receiving the benefits that were already relying on assistance, and then 150,000
Well, in
active
fact,
duty.
if I
So
remember correctly, and sorry to interrupt you, but we actually did the opposite during COVID to try to facilitate more food, like at schools. I remember because of my kids.
emergency funds.
Yeah, that there was an ability for families to stop by and get food at the school sites. And so that's really the opposite of what we saw here. We literally saw people not getting access to any of these items.
Well, I think I put on top of that is, and as you point out, this has been a difficult year. We went into the year knowing it was going to be challenging because the government was pulling back from assistance. For us, it meant a reduction of about 7 million pounds of food. We distributed 53 million pounds of food last year. That's the second most in our 48-year history. Pulling back 7 million pounds, that's 5 million meals. That's a big deal. Well, we went into the year with that. Now, on top of that, you pull additional direct assistance. Then, as you asked initially, what did that look like in terms of numbers? That's nearly 600,000 people that during the shutdown were impacted and who most were going to rely on food banks or pantries to help care for their families.
Let me ask you about a question that I've even asked myself. I think people ask themselves. So there was a shutdown and then it was ended. Did everything just go back to normal? Is that?
I think that's a wonderful question because, and I've said this a number of times, that for our families, it's not like a light switch, right? We're relieved that the shutdown is over, but for the families that we serve, recovery now is going to take some time. These folks had to make sacrifices when those benefits didn't come in or they missed checks. They had to put more debt on credit cards. They had to do other things like that. And so, no, it's why we haven't seen the numbers necessarily drop back down because these families take time to recover. And the other thing I'll add on that is we've seen some new developments about maybe the administration withholding administrative fees for CalFresh or for SNAP. Now, that won't directly impact the benefits that recipients receive or food banks or anything like that, but there will be disruptions with that. And anytime that's out there, our population that needs assistance, it provides new anxiety, right? They're already under duress. And now if they think in the future they may not have access to those benefits, it causes them to do what we saw right before the shutdown, caused them to come, even if they didn't quite need us at that moment, come to see us early because they were anticipating it. And so I think that's what's going to keep the unknowns and the volatility will keep those numbers relatively high.
Sometimes this conversation and others in our state and in our nation feel a little surreal that we're talking about not finding a way to help people who just can't make it by to literally do the basic things to survive, like food on their table, shelter over their head. Are the two that come to mind. Water, that's a whole nother issue, but there's people who have lack of access to clean water in the state of California. And so it really feels sometimes a little overwhelming. I'll tell you, as a leader in our state, that I'm trying to make sure that we serve those who need to be served. And so what gives me hope is not just times like these when we're doing these events out in the community and serving people, and I get to be part of that. But like, as you were saying at the beginning of the year, because the food bank operates the way it does, because of the collaborative nature, you're able to make a case to the state this year about what may be happening. And we had the ability to come in and help in some way to try and soften what we thought potentially could be some of the difficult moments. I think that's really important, that people need to know that the food bank is doing things in the ways to try and maximize resources all around, whether you're someone who's giving individually, or if you're a taxpayer in California who believes that providing food to those who need it should be a priority to the state among the many other priorities that exist. So I'd like you to share more about what your perspective is as someone who is the provider and how this all works.
Yeah. It is disappointing sometimes to go back to that. I don't think food insecurity should be a political thing, and unfortunately that's what's happened. It's one of the things I've loved most about food banking is I believe this is really something everybody can get behind, and we witnessed that, we've experienced that. And I do want to thank you for your leadership in terms of what you're doing at the state level. And as the state tried to anticipate this very challenging year, you put very big budget item in for something that's called Cal Food. And Cal Food is is funding that food banks get, allows us to purchase locally, and I say locally, California grown and sourced food, helping our farmers. This is fresh fruits and vegetables, but it's also proteins and eggs and things like that. It's very nutritious.
It's really interesting, Casey. And I'll just say, I'll put myself, as example, prime example is how much we've undervalued our agriculture economy in California. You said dairy, producers of dairy, of certainly of agricultural products, vegetables and fruits. So doing that helps our local economy continue to cycle.
It creates that circular economy. So those funds, right, that Californians help provide to food banks so that we could care for people, stay right here and support our economy and our farmers, which is so vital here in California. And so it's such a great program. And thank you for working that in. Early on, it was looking a little tough and a little scary, but you did what you needed to do, and appreciate that.
Well, you know, okay, sorry, go ahead.
And I also add, we just coming out of the shutdown, we just have seen a wonderful example of why that funding is so important. It helps food banks respond to emergencies. It's how food banks and how we were able to here in San Diego County react so quickly to that growing need. And we were able to do it with, again, locally grown, sourced California food.
Well, look, one of the things that we remain concerned as from Sacramento, if you will, as we make decisions for the state, primarily with the people's dollars, which is tax dollars, is how do we prioritize all the needs? And I want to ask you something that I actually don't know the answer to, but we are really concerned about what's happening at the federal level, primarily for those who need most help, whether primarily in the medical healthcare space. I don't know the answer, so I ask you: do we have some concerns about what the federal action that's been taken on when it comes to food programs and people potentially falling out of being able to access those programs? Are there any concerns there?
Absolutely. So we're certainly concerned about SNAP, right? SNAP is one of the most economic and effective stimulus and help to folks that are food insecure. For every meal that food banks provide nationally, SNAP provides 9 meals. So, and here in San Diego County, SNAP provides about 60% of the meals to the food insecure that we're supporting. And so, always concerned about SNAP just because of how effective it is. Now, you mentioned Medi-Cal, Medicare. Those changes because of HR1 and other things are going to absolutely impact people. And we're concerned about Medi-Cal, Medicare in the same way we are about SNAP. What we've seen historically is that when you disrupt assistance programs like that, then that drives more people to food banks. So if their Medi-Cal and Medicare benefits are being reduced, then they're going to have to make certain sacrifices. They're going to need to rely on us to help them provide more food and supplement that need so that they can, take care of their medical needs. And so, yes, we're concerned about SNAP, Medi-Cal, Medicare.
Without the basics, people, how do you survive? Shelter, food, and health. And
think about who we support. I mean, we support anybody who's food insecurity, but many of them are seniors. So anything that's going to impact a senior, their state is likely not going to change, right? For the better necessarily. So anything that negatively impacts them, they're going to need us more than ever.
I'm so glad you bring up seniors, a population that is often forgotten in everything we do in society, I think, and certainly even when it comes to legislating, what is happening with our seniors. And I say that because I read a statistic a couple of years ago, so I don't have the latest, but by 2030, it was a quarter of individuals would be seniors in the state of California. So we are an aging population overall, and the needs probably will continue to grow. And I don't know that any of us have really accepted that and started to shift our models of what we do as in government. And I don't know what's happening in the nonprofit sector, but to be ready to respond to that. What is it called? The gray tsunami, I think.
Yes. No, I think you're right. I think there's probably more preparation that's needed and better planning. I think about our seniors. They in our model and the 400,000 people we serve, what we've tried to do, especially lately in the last several years, is create programming that will help during emergencies, but really help also people get back on their feet because we want them to be self-sufficient. And so that's what we try to do with all the populations that we serve. Seniors are different. Seniors, we understand when they come to us, likely we're in it with them for the long haul. We have a senior food box program that reaches, just this program alone, 16,000 seniors a month. They receive a 40-pound box of about 15 items. We know we're going to have to grow that program. And the other items that seniors request, 2 items very commonly. One is adult diapers. And so we're going to try to supplement those programs with adult diapers. Second item is food, pet food. Seniors living alone with a pet, they're going to feed their animals, many of them, before they feed themselves. So we're going to need to look, as you point out, for ways to help, one, be prepared for that growing number, but also be able to serve them in the best way we can.
And I think we all need to become a little bit more caring, and not just understanding, but caring. Because someone listening to that may say, well, why would the food bank, who needs to get food to people, care about getting food to people's pets?
Yeah.
But if you think about this from a complete system, mental health and vitality of people, when perhaps a pet may be their companion,
They're living alone,
that actually helps probably reduce healthcare costs, because this person is maybe more and we seem to always all think in silos. So what I really appreciate about the food bank is, our main mission is delivering food to people, but what are the other things we need to do to make sure that we are serving the people that are coming to see us? And you do that through a lot of partnerships as well. You mentioned over 450, I think you said, partnerships. You're throughout the entire county, big and small. Do you want to talk about any of those partnerships that you have and why those are so critical?
Oh, you're right. They range from your very small church pantry. In fact, of the 450 nonprofit partners, the majority of them are faith-based. These are churches out in neighborhoods, caring for their neighbors, not just their congregation, but anybody who shows up.
Yeah.
And so, from small to the largest nonprofits that most people are aware of, Rescue Mission, Father Joe's, Jewish Family Services, Armed Services Y. All of those are partners of ours. They all do amazing work. They get their food from us. Most of our nonprofit partners get most of their food from us. And so I think folks really appreciate hearing that, understanding the work that we do is spread throughout all of these other, all through this network and all this great work that's happening. So we appreciate those. And then I'll say, if there's anything that good came out of the shutdown, is it also allowed us to either strengthen some of those partnerships or establish new partnerships. And that's what we're about, honestly. Again, to solve this problem, we want more partners. And we want to have deeper partnerships. And so that did come out of the shutdown, and we'll continue to go down that path.
Well, and this is such a perfect time of the year to be thinking about. People are doing a lot of reflection. I know I certainly am, thinking about the new year, perhaps some resolutions. And there's a lot of things that you do as an organization where any one of us can be a part of that.
Yeah.
And you've talked about you can be a well-structured, oiled machine of a nonprofit and partner with you, or you can be just an individual who wants to go help pack things at your facility, which I had the opportunity and real pleasure actually of going and meeting some of your tremendous volunteers there. There's a continuum of things that could be done. You can give monetarily in terms of supporting the work that you do, donate to the food bank. Do you get any enjoyment and a lot of fulfillment from the people who, I certainly did when I came in. I volunteered for a few hours to do some of the packaging. People who were there were just so joyous about what they were doing. You run a big organization. Do you ever get to enjoy that part of it?
I was in the volunteer center last week. I stayed. A group was coming in that I stayed to meet with, and I actually walked from bin to bin. They were actually sorting produce, so we had probably 15 bins and stations set up, and I went from bin to bin, getting taking the opportunity to chat with everybody in our volunteer center. And right now, our our sessions have about 40 to 50 people in them. So
Mhm.
it's a big group. And yeah, it's very inspiring, and it's what keeps me going.
Mhm.
I mean, folks there, and what I'm always impressed with is there's typically, you're going to find some teenagers. The last time, and I volunteered with a group last year, and I ended up at a produce bin, and I was with two juniors in high school. Didn't know each other; they came separately,
Mhm.
and they'd both started volunteering for class credit, but that class was over.
Mhm.
They just continued to do it because they enjoyed it. And so, yes, I do take the time to get down in that volunteer center, and our volunteers inspire me all the time. I'll also mention I was at a meeting with our Vista team and that location last month, and one of the Vista members, and this was in the middle of the shutdown, and people were tired, and they said, if you ever get bogged down, this is what one of our team members said. If you ever get bogged down, I would encourage you to go out to one of our distributions and pitch in. And she said that usually brings me right back to the mission and why
Mhm.
we do that. And so I'm lucky. I get to see that all of the time.
Yeah.
And that certainly gets me going.
Yeah, and it's really amazing to hear that no matter your age, you can, because when I was
Uh,
there, I actually volunteering with someone who was retired
yeah.
and who did it as part of a regular uh, retirement activities
Yeah.
and brought fulfillment. But to hear young people and and for everyone to realize that I've chatted with this with other people. There's value to everybody, and we can all
Yeah.
bring some value. And some of us maybe can contribute again a lot through our treasure. Some of us through our talent, as we call it,
Yeah.
the church, with money or with your time.
Uh,
And this time of the year, I like to ask you, like, what are the things that you're looking for? Yes, this time of the year when the needs are big, and we want to make sure that families have the meals during this holiday season, but also throughout the rest of the year. How do you what do you envision in terms of growth? Where are the things where you'd like to see uh, the community step up a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you used that example in terms of value. Going back to my time last week hanging out with that volunteer group, one of the women was a regular senior and one a
Mhm.
regular volunteer, and she grabbed my shoulder or my arm when I walked by. She was sitting down and sorting produce, and she said, "I just wanted to thank you for accommodating and letting me volunteer, and that I don't have to stand by a
Mhm.
produce bin." And yeah, we're a lean, mean machine, like you mentioned. We don't have a lot of employees. We rely on volunteers. 15,000 volunteers last year
Mhm.
that volunteered at both of our warehouses, counted for 107,000 hours. And so we rely on all these stakeholders, and volunteers are right up there in our ability. And actually, it would be impossible to do what we do
So
without
those are
them.
volunteers at your operations. By the way, I also want to mention your operations are also sophisticated. You have these machineries and things that also do packaging and things like that. So it's not all just standing around and packing hand by hand. You've
It,
got a system that works really effectively and efficiently.
Well, thanks for mentioning that. We do some unique things that other food banks don't do.
Mhm.
And for the listeners out there, call me up. We're always happy to give a tour and to
Yep.
show people around for some of the things we do. But back to your question about what's important to us. Absolutely. If you want to participate and be involved in the work we do, monetary donations are always amazing.
Yeah, those
We
machines look very expensive, by the
Yes. Well,
way.
I'll tell you, every dollar we receive, we can convert to 2 meals. So we're very
Yeah.
efficient. The dollar goes a long way. We absolutely rely on volunteers, like I mentioned. We also rely on food donations. And so I would say host a food drive.
Mhm.
Do it as a family, do it as a business, do it as a department within a business. You can actually make it a competition. And we also do a neat thing where we do virtual food drives. So you can do it online and you
Mm.
actually have the shopping experience. It's gamified in a way. And so those are just some ways. And then to that broader question, what we're looking at this coming year, I'll go back to the challenge that we were anticipating and the reduction of 7 million pounds and 5 million meals. Our number one priority this year is to make that up. And so that's what we're ultimately focused on, is to make sure that we're getting the amount of food out in the community that the community needs. And so that's our focus right now.
We have a lot of people during this time of the year that are looking to give. We talked a little bit about donations, and you've been really subtle with it. but I'm not going to be as subtle. You know, I think there are a lot of needs that there's aspirations. I'm assuming you as a leader of this organization have for the future. Is there a campaign happening? Is there anything like that on what is the next sort of major goal from a financial standpoint? And, you know, some people give a lot, but some people can also contribute a little, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. So we went from the shutdown right into our holidays, and the holidays are always traditionally a time when the numbers increase, right? It's when families need us even more. And so we're here in the middle of the holidays, and we have a holiday food drive. This is our 45th annual holiday food drive. And so I would encourage folks to consider us, to think about that. And what this food drive does is you can either donate food, and we're partnering with Albertsons, Vaughn's, and Pavilions throughout the county, 72 stores. So you can either place food in our red barrels at each store, or bring it to us at the food bank, or you can buy a $5 hunger bag at the cash register, and it'll serve our main purpose, which is either it'll provide the cash resources to buy more food, or those donations will allow us to then get that out to our nonprofit partners.
And I wanted to reiterate, because I saw it again when I had a chance to visit you. You take all of those donations. Sometimes people feel, well, if I collect just a few cans, like it won't make a difference. You have everything, and you have a system of sorting and a system of making sure that the quality and it gets out to the right people. Yeah. I mean, what you contribute, what you can give to the food bank gets put to use. I saw it personally. And certainly you do it every day to the hundreds of thousands of people you serve.
Every can matters, and I would say every dollar matters. I'll go back to that's 2 meals. You know, we see this every year. Last year, received a contribution from a woman. It was a dollar bill in a letter. She had a little note and said, I wish I could do more. You've helped me in the past. I wanted to give. And so every dollar matters.
Yeah, that was probably meant a lot to her, and it probably sounds like it meant a lot to you and to the food bank. Well, Casey, I just want to say thank you for being a great community partner, great community asset, certainly to the communities I represent, but really throughout San Diego. And we know the need is big, and it's the entire county. And I can say as a statewide person, it's always a moment of pride to be able to share what's happening at the food bank, how you're looking to innovate and do things differently and serve people where they need to be served. That's the mindset that it just makes it easy for people to volunteer and give, but also for others to come and help and partner with you. And I think you have the right tone. And I just want to say again, thank you for doing that. And I want to ask you to close this up with any finishing thoughts on the food bank and the future.
Well, I'll say it's a privilege to do what we do. And I'll close with we're only able to do it because of the San Diego community. The community responds time and time again. And that's because they're well aware what some of the needs are and the important needs in San Diego County. So a big thank you to our community, and then thank you for your leadership.
Casey, thank you so much for being here. It's really been an honor to have you. And I want to be direct with everyone watching and listening. Hunger in San Diego is not a mystery. It's not that complicated. There's a gap that exists out in our community between what cost of items, of food, and what people earn, between what our families need and what the system actually provides for them. But we know how to close that gap. The question is whether we have the will to do it. We heard about how we can do that here today. If you're willing to support, please go to SanDiegoFoodBank.org. If you're struggling yourself or know someone who is to put food on their table, please go to SanDiegoFoodBank.org. Find food near you. Get help applying for CalFresh, the benefits. You should not have to do this alone, and you actually don't have to. If you're in a position to help, again, go to the website, donate, volunteer. It's really a joy to do so. Show up and vote and say that this matters to you, because policy is how we fix this at a bigger scale. 848,000 people. That's not a statistic. That's our neighbors. It's our coworkers. It's our kids' classmates and their families. It's the people who work really hard in San Diego, people who love their families, people who deserve a system that doesn't leave them behind. This holiday season, let's take care of each other. If this conversation meant something to you, please share it. Subscribe to Dreaming Big, Working Hard so that you don't miss on what's next. I'm David Alvarez. Please keep dreaming, keep working, and keep showing up.